today, what I thought we would talk about is what sorts of NFTs are out there, talk about some stories of successful NFTs and why we as a group think they worked and why some of them maybe not so much, and some different categories of NFTs. So,
Can I
the,
can I
oh,
can I do that since that's literally briefly the masterclass I'm teaching on Thursday?
oh, you sure can. Go ahead, Adrian.
Okay. So, NFTs are pretty much anything you can think of. We have been doing NFTs for tickets, like concert tickets and things like that. Everybody got all excited that they're now doing it for the Mavericks, but we've been doing that since South by Southwest in 2017. It can be to track goods. Supply chain was one of the earliest things. So not only can you use it to track luxury goods, which we've also been doing since 2017, you can do it for things like, well, you have a sensor up on in a big warehouse and the light bulb goes out. The sensor says, hey, the light bulb went out. That triggers off a smart contract that then says, hey, we need to go get this light bulb. Is it an inventory? Nope, not an inventory. Okay, go order that. Then that orders it. Then it comes in. The mailroom checks it in. It's in. Smart contract goes, oh, okay, go get that, and have the maintenance guy go put that in. And all of that inventory piece is an NFT. All of that can be done with smart contracts and NFTs. Now that's the boring kind of stuff. For those of you in the sexier entertainment industry, the best part that you can do is you can use NFTs not only for ticketing into your custom community, your private community, your insider community, where you have access to your audience. You can also do gamified NFTs like card packs. Remember baseball packs where you're going to go to collect the whole team? You can do the same thing where you have a different piece of art for each song on an album. And if you collect the entire album, then you can unlock an additional secret song that only those people get. You can do things like the outfits that you're wearing in your concert, you can turn those into 3D wearables in the metaverse. You can actually hold concerts in the metaverse, and you can have different layers of tickets for different areas in your virtual world that people can access. So if they don't have a backstage pass, they can't actually get backstage, right? And then you can also gamify it where there is a secret way where you can actually get backstage. So then you have people stage rushing and all this other stuff that they do in real life in the metaverse too. It's super cool, you guys. It's super, super cool. For movies, movies are amazing. There's always bloopers. There's always these other things that you have. Like I have my film, my very first film that I made. I have all of the negative that we didn't use. I have everything. I have absolutely everything. And this is from the 90s. So I'm putting together these little packages. So when you do these movie things, you can have these little moments. You can have outtakes. You could literally do an entire gamified series of NFTs just on the bloopers, especially if it's a comedy movie. That would sell like crazy. You can do for the common, for everyone, just to get everybody excited and a taste, just like they did with King Kong versus Godzilla. You can do a whole NFT animated movie poster, right? You can do things where you have the NFTs that actually represent the real world item, like a certificate of authenticity, or you can have them like tennis shoes, where you're looking and you're sending out these NFTs, you're selling these NFTs, and depending on which one sells the best and which one reaches the highest value, you can say, we're going to make this a real world item. And because you own this particular version of this NFT, we're actually going to send you one as a thank you for helping us figure out of these 100 designs, which ones we're going to go next. So do you see how it can be literally anything?
Thanks, Adrian. That's a great overview of what can be an NFT. I'd like to take a moment now and have Carlos introduce himself. Go ahead, Carlos.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Carlos Rodriguez. I am an executive conference producer. I primarily work with enterprise and startups, basically at different conference levels for IT, as well as fintech, blockchain, and now AI. I also work in the anti aging and aesthetics, which is a little bit of a divergence from everything else that I currently produce. But if you are basically looking at ultimately opportunities in the conference space or trying to learn about NFTs, you are in the right place to be.
Thanks, Carlos. So, I wanted to talk about some specific examples. Obviously, it's often used for art, and we, of course, have the Beeple situation where we had an an NFT sell for almost $70 million. But obviously, this is not the common amount of money. There's certainly many art NFTs that have sold for a lot. But I wanted to talk a little bit about things like crypto blocks, where there's algorithmically generated art. Does anybody have any experience with that in our group? And I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I just did that. Not on there, but I have an entire generative art project that I just did called Fractal Meditation. So I would hand draw these very beautiful geometric, things, and then I used a generative programmatic thing to kind of mash them up into unbelievable art. I'll send you one.
Oh, cool. Scott, I was wondering what your thought would be about the ability to hold rights, because algorithms are notoriously difficult to patent or protect. So, how does an artist who generates algorithmic art keep ownership over their stuff, or can they?
There's probably two paths to this. One, which is no matter how much we want it to be, there is no legal precedent for enforcement of on-chain programs that you own it or don't own it. So it won't hold up in court. You don't really own it. They say your keys, you own it, but in a legal sense, it's really tricky to understand what own means. But this is not a lawyer chat. There's plenty of other those. We won't go down that route any further.
Yeah, okay.
When we talk about protecting yourself, a lot of this depends on the blockchain you're on. Because if you're, something like your program or your smart contract or your code, if it's deployed on chain and it's readable, everybody can reverse engineer it. It's kind of the way it goes. If you generate them offline and just deploy the finished artifacts, that's one way to protect, I guess, your secret generation method. But, when you do it like that, then it might lose some of its, I don't know, let's say flair that the community is used to. Like they like to do this whole breeding and blah, blah, blah stuff that goes on out there. And so I think there's part of it is, what's your intention? Are you one of those people who want to just let everybody take your thing and adjust it how they want, so you don't want to protect it? Or do you go all the way in where you have to keep it offline? I would say that if you're, a name brand, you're going to deploy none of this open source, whatever open source means in this case. You're going to protect it, in a closed environment. You're going to generate them all. You're going to manually deploy in a method that makes sense to you. You're going to control the output, because no matter how good you make an algorithm, sometimes it creates something that you don't want to put your stamp on. So I think there's that part of it too. But when it comes down to, is it yours, right? If your key deploys it, it's yours. You can potentially prove that you were the first one who deployed it somewhere. And, quite honestly, it's almost like who gets there first and who does it the best versus, is it mine? There's some really tricky things. And, Adrian, it'd be interesting to know what you think, especially since the project cloning is happening a lot out there. Is it okay if somebody clones your thing better? Is that the point? Is it annoying? Are you mad at them?
Well, I hope they're not, because I'm cloning crypto kitties and making crypto vixens. And the only thing I'm not cloning the art, I'm cloning the process, and I'm starting with their smart contracts and then improving them. But they have published all of those contracts except the breeding engine, by the way. That is off chain. They've published everything under the MIT, community license, which means feel free to rip off and duplicate. I think in that case, and the whole thing on GitHub, you can go look, and if it's under MIT, the whole point is we want the community to rip off and duplicate and do it better and improve it, and then also publish their derivative works under MIT. So I'm doing that on an NFT platform. I'm still on line 1630 because I'm 31 because I'm debugging, but I'm doing it also for an ICO contract. an affiliate contract, a bounty contract, and an airdrop contract to really make them easier to start building a community around whatever. So I do think it is a little. It's a little bit of an unspoken DAO
Mhm.
under that license, right? Like
Yeah.
we can all do everything, just don't do bad.
Yeah, and there was something that I read maybe a few months ago. Somebody like directly cloned an ape to a different chain, and
Well,
they
that's
tried to
copyright
sue
infringement.
them.
Yeah.
Well, so
No. So here's
so
the
take it out of the
thing.
legal side of the world, right? I just put it on a different chain. It's my creation over here.
Well, wait. An ape that they owned or an ape that they did not own?
So this is where I'm gonna parse words for my point. So if I take a picture of something in one place and I
Yes.
make a copy of it in a different place with a different signature on it, is it exactly the same? Yes or no?
Wait, you take a photo of it, and is there any manipulation whatsoever?
Let's
Is there
say
any
no.
transformation? Then no. Then that is a forgery.
So the question is, can you copyright generative stuff?
Yes. Here's why. You cannot copyright the I can, because the generative stuff that I made, I created all of the original pieces that then the algorithm used to make the generative art. So that's where it gets tricky. So
Mm-hmm.
CryptoKitties Foundation, well, Larva Labs made all of the original art pieces that go together to breed and make these new kitty cats. So can the owner of that cat copyright that cat? No, because they did not. Generative just means it's auto magically putting together pieces of someone else's art, right? If it's all your art and you're creating the generative pieces, then yes, you can. But I
Okay, so you
think,
said something there. So let's
yeah,
pretend you own a CryptoKitty. I don't know if you do or not. Let's pretend you do.
I
It's
don't.
number 7.
I wish I did, because I've been trying since they came out in 2017, and I just now figured out MetaMask, and even then I literally lost my keys for 2 days and lost all of my crypto for my own company. Like I'm not. Yeah, no, they did not make it easy. Let me hold it in a wallet that's like crypto.com, that's super, super easy, idiot proof, and civilianized, and let me buy it with a debit card. And then we take over the world. So that's what we're doing with Crypto Vixens. That's our
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Hey
So
guys,
the
I'm gonna
go ahead.
interrupt you for a minute and invite Rayan. Am I saying that right, Rayan?
Yeah, it's
To
Rayon.
Rayan, go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks very much for the time today, folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great group of experts here with regards to NFTs, DeFi, and DAOs, and so just wanted to ask a question. As a technologist, I get the sense or the impression that a lot of folks these days are trying to force or push blockchain as the solution to the problem, where a simple database might do just as good, if not better, to solve the issue. And I'm wondering, amongst the experts here, if you have kind of a really quick and easy way to assess if an idea or a concept really does need the blockchain, really does need something that it offers versus does not. I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Oh, Mariana, I would love for you to hop in on this one.
Thanks. So there are clearly technology components that Scott can only address better than me. But from the business model perspective, think of it this way: if you were part of Uber, Lyft, and shared economy, population, you were able to make money using your favorite app or participating in your app's economy, if you like. But now with blockchain, you can make money and you can be part of the economy. So you're basically invested in it, and your investments grow with the economy. So it's not just that you're now getting paid as part of your participation, but you can also earn some investment with it. So if your solution from the business side allows for that kind of a business model, then I would think to use one of these new models that we're talking about here today.
May I ask a follow-up question on that, Mariana? So
Sure.
in that context of that example of, let's say you were an early adopter and rider for Uber. If Uber had a policy that was very benevolent, which stated that for all of our early riders and drivers, we're going to give you a piece of equity stake in the company. Is that analogous to the concept that you were referring to?
Very similar, yes. Except that I would say with some of the layer one companies that we worked with, many of the participants were actually creating, the vehicle, if you like,
Mhm.
versus just riding it, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Scott, do you want to hop in on this one?
Well, so I think there's a different flavor of this, which is if you're in a traditional enterprise as a technologist, you start with the questions of, is this for my company? If the answer is yes, it's for my company, there's really close to zero reasons to ever need a blockchain. Maybe a ledger is useful, but a blockchain, probably not. If you expand to, hey, but I want to do real-time proof to external auditors, you can always do that with a database too, because big vendors like Oracle, IBM, all those have definitely passed regulatory muster, and auditors are happy with things signed by those traditional big systems. When you start talking about cross-border activities with potential governments involved in the ability to segment, the ability to chop apart, the ability to expose certain segments, it starts to get tricky to have multiple caches with quote unquote a single source of truth. And that's where I think, in the traditional business sense, you start to bleed into where multi-party ledgers, where multi-party blockchains come in, when it is a non-single entity thing. And so you always have to ask your questions, why am I building this? And if it's to expose data to lots of people, maybe it's interesting. If it's to have multiple participants, it certainly gets more interesting. Do you have to cache it all over the world? Okay, now we're talking potential uses here. Outside of the idea of token economics, all these new business models, I want to talk about traditional business because it's really hard to justify the use of blockchain when an Oracle database works just fine. It actually might be a ton cheaper to do it on a blockchain. So you have to think about it like that too. So that's kind of where I go with my level of thinking, is the answer is always no, unless there's a reason to pick yes.
Thanks for sharing
And
that perspective.
and
Please go
and
ahead.
I have one simple solution. Very, very easy for traditional business. Does the data need to be immutable? Right? Do you need to do something where even if it's done wrong and needs to be corrected later, you need to track and audit exactly who did what and when? That's, for me, for traditional business, a good use case of why you would want to implement blockchain. Otherwise, it can be very heavy, it can be very expensive. We're doing private blockchains in our dating app. We're doing a public facing one, but then we're doing a private one for the security piece for anytime anybody's, got a security issue like a, potential rape allegation, where that's the evidence chain. So that goes out to the evidence chain. It is not touchable without law enforcement or a court order. So for me, it's better than a database because heck, I used to break into banks for a living. I can get into a database. I'm not going to get into a blockchain without the proper authorization. So for security and for that, and for it to be immutable, to me, that is a good use case. But that's how I look at it. 99% of the time, you do not need a blockchain for a regular business.
At
And
this
as a,
moment, oh, go ahead. At this moment, I'd like to have Eric introduce himself. Hi, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to join late. I was tied up. Just quick introduction. I'm a blockchain developer and advisor to a number of projects. I'm also an occasional investor. I think a lot about token economics. That's it.
Thank you, Eric. And at this point, I'd like to turn to Jesse and see what Jesse's question is.
Hi guys. So I am working on a music album. I had like an inspiration a few months ago to do this album called Love and Light. And I was around like when NFTs were pretty popular. So I have like some pretty cool domain names. I'm thinking of like I own museum of NFT.com and then NFTcrowdfund.com. So I'm thinking of using one of those, but I have some ideas of how to use the blockchain and how to do NFTs, but I was wondering like some specific questions I had. So one idea I have, something different about the music album is that it's not about me, it's about the producers, the artists, and the contributors, and that's really important. It's one thing to say that, it's another thing to mean that. So the producer I have, and then the artists I've hired all over the world, depending on how much they contributed, obviously I want them to own a percentage equity, but that's only one part of it. So one part is supporting the artists, the contributors, the producers, but then another part I was thinking is being able to offer basically NFTs that would give a percentage of equity. So imagine, let's say I leave like 30% open for a single song, and each NFT gives you 1%. For me, I guess the question is like, there's different platforms you can use out there where essentially all I need from the person is they give me their email address. I get their email address. I invite them to a platform. They have to accept the invite. As soon as they accept that invite, then basically everything is automated. They own whatever percentage of the song that I've given them access to. But I guess the question here is like, and I was doing some research. Let me just pull it up. How do you actually control the delegation of access? So like, let's say I gave 1% of equity via an NFT. So the person gets the NFT, they give me their email address, they own 1% of that song. Let's say they transfer that NFT to someone else. Like what's the process to be able to, is this doable, I guess, first off, and what's the easiest way to handle the equity distribution of my music to people who want to support it?
So
So,
Jesse, oh, first of all, I want to suggest that you look into Ditto Music. They added NFTs to their blockchain, and they created a situation where people can purchase shares in a song. So I would definitely take a look at how they did that. But go ahead, Adrian. You had something you wanted to say.
so I was going to say, if you're just talking about rights distribution for collaborations, Cargo.build does that up to 15 people to do revenue share splits, and it will auto magically do it for you.
I was also going to talk about Mosaic, which I'm a global ambassador for. Mosaic is a firm based out of Shanghai, and they have put together an NFT-based ecosystem for music rights. So there's a whole lot of interesting things that they're doing, with the understanding that music rights have always been problematic and that they need to be democratized. They're obviously not the only ones, since others have suggested others, but I can recommend that you have at least a look at Mosaic, Mozzik.
Thanks, Eric. I also wanted to go ahead and Jesse, did you have a follow up question or?
I did.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
that's super helpful. I wrote all those down. And then I guess this is a simpler question because I know other projects are doing it. But obviously, like, so the whole part of the idea is that by allowing people to, giving them a real incentive and utility to own a portion of the song is like one part of the journey. But then knowing that that by them investing and owning the song, obviously the more plays the song gets, the more the equity is worth. So there's going to be a whole roadmap where by investing in the NFTs, you're essentially helping create the ecosystem in the world. And one of the things I wanted to do too is like, and I see that the other communities do this. I was just wondering from a technical standpoint, how do you delegate access? So I was looking at like how Bored Apes do it. Basically, it says that you can do token gated access. So basically, people get a certain balance of tokens to gain access to a special Discord server or
Oh,
Telegram. So I guess my
Mintgate.
question is, if
Mintgate.
everyone who purchases equity, they get an NFT, they get equity of this song. I'd like to give them access to like a private community, but again, my concern was like, if they no longer own that NFT, how do we like? What's the best way to control access
Mint.
as NFT ownership moves?
Mintgate. It will check for ownership, or it will check for number of creator coins and tokens that you have in the wallet, and if you don't have enough, it'll prompt you to buy them. And
One
it'll do that for the NFTs as well.
one point about the Board Ape Yacht Club, their latest drop, that's really important to do when you're building these communities is that they made their drop so expensive that the original community, sort of the founding community that couldn't really afford the pricing for this drop, felt kind of left out. They didn't give them an airdrop. They didn't include them in any, sort of affordable way. They just dropped, something that was $10,000 a piece. And I think part of the problem with the drop was that. So you have to really think about not just the economic model of, traditionally, how can you structure consensus, et cetera, but how do you actually layer this into the community so that your community stays cohesive and supportive?
Another
Speaking,
thing to important that's to point out, since this is such a new nascent industry, specifically in the music industry, just be careful when you're looking at. I'm not a lawyer, but you definitely want to be looking at the securities law if you're going to be doing resale of music in NFTs. So you might want to kind of stay away from that for a while. There's going to be some interesting things going on. Perfect example, follow Tory Lanez. Specifically, he's doing such a great job with his NFT, but there are some really interesting, um, let's just put it this way, legal concerns that are coming up now with the resale of those albums because they do have a multi-level marketing aspect built within them, and it is a security.
so going back to the idea of, thank you, Carlos. Going back to the idea of legal and owning things and Board Ape, the on Friday, Arizona Ice T announced that it had bought a Board Ape NFT from the Red Hot Board Ape Yacht Club series, and they put out a tweet with their Board Ape picture in the tweet. And Yuga Labs, the collection's creator, later came out and said that Arizona Ice Tea used its brand logo in an quote inappropriate way, unquote. So I think it'd be interesting for us to talk a little bit about the idea of what owning an NFT allows you to do, especially in terms of using it in a marketing sense. Does anybody want to hop in on that question?
Well, first, a point there is that if you're creating something that actually has branding issues, licensing issues, traditional media kind of contractual issues, one company to check out is Monax, Monax, .io. They've been creating these legal contracts that can be attached to the smart contracts to anywhere in the blockchain. You want to consider having a solution like that that actually captures all of the different co-branding, co-marketing, licensing, and ownership rights for the particular property.
Agreed. Because smart contracts are not really contracts, they're actually auto magical directives.
Can you expand on that a little bit, Adrian?
Sure. So, smart contracts are not legal contracts. They are, some things are, like the title to a house. Like we do titles, and I think it's Titan is what does it. We do marriage licenses here in Nevada, and they do the entire land registry in Wyoming. So things, very simple things like that, the smart contracts are considered legal contracts. But for the most part, especially in anything with a collaboration, where you're talking about you're doing the music, you're doing the art, you're doing the tech, and there's an agreement, that agreement should be an actual legal contract in the real world as well. Smart contracts are not necessarily, or it has not been taken up the food chain enough to be citable, that they could be legally enforced, uh, other than as a verbal contract. So you want to make sure that you have everything in writing, everything signed, I's dotted, T's crossed, real lawyers involved, and then Monax can attach all of the legal contracts in the blockchain world. So it literally translates the real world into the metaverse and the blockchain, and attaches everything so that it's all cohesive and all in one place and easily findable, and everybody knows everybody's on the same page.
Thanks, Adrian. I'd like to refresh the room and say welcome. This is Infiom, NFTs, and DeFi. We're talking about NFTs, DeFis, and Daos. And this is your session, so feel free to raise your hand anytime you have a question. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, we're going to invite more up. So go ahead, more.
Can you, because you started, I was one of the first people in, and at the very beginning you said this is a beginner's kind of class or a beginner's room where people can learn.
Uh-huh.
Can you start with a basic explanation of what NFTs, DeFi's, and DAOs are, please?
Sure. So an NFT is considered a non-fungible token, and the idea is that it's not one for one. If you think about cash, I can trade $1 for 4 quarters. It's always that way. But if you're thinking about a bottle of wine or a diamond or something, there are specific issues around what the value is, and the value changes depending on how rare or special or desirable something is. So an NFT is a way to do a peer-to-peer, one-to-one transaction for, it could be a song, it could be many different things. We've talked about a lot of them. A DAO is a way to set up a company that
And more,
allows.
can you mute yourself, please? That little mic on the right-hand side.
Yep, sorry.
Thanks.
Sure. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and it's a way of organizing companies, groups, or value that's different from a stock market or traditional shares. The big difference is there's no central leadership, and the company is governed based on rules devised when the DAO is created. Decisions are largely based on triggers that are built into the rules of the DAO, and each action or vote is represented by some kind of transaction on the blockchain. So it's a different way of organizing groups or companies that's not your traditional stock ownership, pyramidal, hierarchical way of having a company. And DeFi stands for decentralized finance, and it's used to remove intermediaries between parties in sales and other kinds of financial transactions. So it's based on cryptocurrency and the blockchain, and it takes a lot of the traditional money middlemen out of the process of moving money around. So those are some very basic definitions, but if you have any further questions, more, I'm sure that the team would be happy to answer them.
No, that's a really good bait, because that I was just looking for a basic kind of explanation. NFTs, I've got a fair idea of what that is, but DAOs and DeFi's is something that is still very new. Like I'm basically here to learn. Like this is
Maybe we can have Eric define the DAO as well. Eric, you want to say a little bit about DAOs?
That'd be great.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I always like to talk about things from non-technological perspectives because people understand, especially people that are coming from outside, they'll have a better understanding of things that are already in place that some of our blockchain counterparts really sort of are analogs of. So, so a DAO is basically an organization instrument. It's like a company, except that companies have to have formation within a certain jurisdiction, which means to say that there is a sovereign involved that has to give that permission, a king or a local republic or someone has to say yes, this thing is now allowed to exist. And generally, the purpose of these, this is known as a corporation. Generally, the purpose of corporations is to do two things: to hold beneficial ownership of the fruits of the labor involved, and also to grant control to specific individuals of the direction of the effort. DAOs do exactly the same thing as corporations, except that they do so with mechanisms that are on the blockchain that therefore allow the beneficial ownership and the control to remain anonymous. And also, because they are creatures of the blockchain, they don't have to ask the permission of a sovereign. Um, they simply exist, and they exist outside any jurisdiction. So that means that to that extent, DAOs are not liable for compliance with any particular set of rules because they don't exist in any specific jurisdiction. They don't have to do the exhaustive amount of reporting that corporations today have to do. They're not prohibited from doing all kinds of things. They don't have to pay taxes. They don't, they have tremendous benefits. And so DAOs are really likely the next evolution of the corporation. They signify the end of the corporation as we know it, because corporations simply cannot compete with a creature that is so free of constraints and punishments. Um, and so it's part of the general evolution towards freedom that blockchain technologies afford us. That's my 2 cents on the subject.
I have an extra penny on that one. Uh, yes, DAOs have to pay taxes. No, there is no way to enforce DAOs paying taxes. That's why the IRS is getting so hell bent on taxing crypto at a certain amount, because these cryptos, anybody can mint a token, anybody can create a DAO, anybody can start doing something, transacting, making tons of money, and the IRS is like, where do we insert ourselves in this process so that we can get our share? So
Let me counter that perspective. No, DAOs do not have to pay taxes because they don't exist legally. Only legal entities can pay taxes or may be forced to pay taxes. And these things basically don't exist. Now, the IRS is, of course, deeply concerned about that. And as I tell people often, regulators can regulate whatever they want, right? I mean, they once regulated that tomatoes were to be considered fruits for whatever reason. But just because there's a regulator that issues some regulation doesn't mean it can be enforced, as you pointed out. Uh, not that it makes any sense, and so a regulation that cannot be enforced is really worthless, right? But even just from a legal perspective, DAOs cannot be taxed because they have no jurisdiction. They don't actually, no sovereign ever
what,
exist,
what
granted them existence.
but you don't have to, because you can be an unincorporated business society is the exact same concept, and they have managed to figure out how to tax them too. So the issue with the DAO is they want, yeah, somebody needs to be on the hook. Otherwise, literally they've got this, it depends, right? If you're talking about a charitable thing where it's a DAO that does, you know, clean water or builds wells or whatever, the IRS probably isn't going to like even bat an eyelash. But if it's like, here's a DAO, it's doing a DeFi thing, it's funding people's car purchases, it's making 40% a month, they're going to be like, that's a fuck ton of money, where's ours? And then they're going to laser point it and try and start identifying the people. The issue with the DAO is it's not just autonomous, it's, as you said, it can be anonymous because it's on the blockchain. And if they're not requiring KYC and AML on all of the participants, then that's yet another thing. So then it just drives the entire DAO underground into an illegal category, because whether or not they can enforce the regulations, they can make things regulated and violations of those regulations criminal, and then that becomes this massive lever and leverage that they can put over the citizens of this country, and other countries can do the same thing, which is why Wyoming created an LLC DAO that it gives you that legal structure, and it gives you some formality so that you don't get in trouble.
Yeah,
So
that's about as retarded as security token offerings, right? If you're going to create, if you're going to create, I know that sounds
no,
really
no, I love
offensive
you.
on my
I
part.
love you. You said it out loud. I love you. It's awesome. Keep going. Sorry.
Someone recently pointed out to me that I shouldn't use the R word, and I'm like, "What's the R word?" And they said retarded. I was like, "Oh, really? Why not?" I mean,
Oh, it's politically
it's
incorrect.
yeah, apparently.
Stupid is much better.
Okay, stupid. Anyway, the thing is this: law isn't just some willy nilly random thing that that governments can do whatever with, right? Law is law. It has to first be legislated by a Congress, and there has to be, well, a Congress around it. There has to be consensus that, that's going to be, and then it has to be enforcement policies, etc. So if we're going to say that DAOs are illegal, you know, there's two forms of law in the world: imperial law and common law. And they work a little differently in that under imperial law, everything is by default prohibited unless explicitly granted the freedom by the sovereign, by the empire. Under common law, everything is explicitly free unless explicitly denied by law, right? So we live in a common law environment, and that means to say that we are actually free to do whatever the hell we want to do until explicitly told otherwise, right? Now, can they ban DAOs? Can they make them illegal? Well, yes, of course. They can make anything they want illegal, given that they go through the proper deliberations in Parliament or Congress or whatever, and and that takes some time and whatever. So, which means to say that right now, DAOs are not illegal, and because they don't exist as a legal entity, they have no taxation obligations, they have no reporting obligations, they have no obligations at all. They don't exist as far as law is concerned, right?
Well,
Now,
Eric, I sense this is something that we could go into a lot of detail on, but I do want to take a moment and introduce Brady, and I'd like to see if
mhm,
we could get to Irina's questions. So before
yeah,
we get too far down the funnel on this one, go
We
ahead,
need to
Brady.
have an entire room on this rabbit hole because
Yeah,
Eric and I could go on forever.
I totally agree, and I will set that up for you guys. Go ahead, Brady.
Cool. Yeah, interesting points on both ends. I mean, I think another discussion on that is definitely interesting to hear. But yeah, my name is Brady Williams. I am with Infiom. I helped open up the first chapter out here in San Antonio, Texas. But a little bit about myself, just briefly. I got started in the blockchain space early on in like 2015, which I think by most standards of the people that I associate with would say I'm still relatively new to the space, but I like it and it's been exciting. I worked with a cryptocurrency exchange. I was the head of U.S. operations for that, and since then, just been working on my uh, mining operation and a few other businesses and companies and advising one or two. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and definitely enjoy hearing what's been discussed so far.
Thanks, Brady. Irina, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm completely new to NFTs, so this is probably a very basic questions that I have. I would like to start creating NFTs, and I was wondering when I opened the site where you can create your own NFTs, it said like I had to have Ethereum, and then I learned that you have to have a special wallet and Ethereum in that wallet. And I was wondering, what's the charge for creating your NFTs?
You don't
And
have to have a charge.
okay, do
Okay,
you have to? Sorry.
okay, sorry, go ahead, finish your question. I was just like, I hate it when all these
Thank
people
you.
spread these myths. But okay, go ahead.
uh,
Yes.
Also, I was wondering, when you create an NFT, what's it tied to? Like to your account on that specific site, to your wallet, to what's the tie that's yours?
Okay, it is to your wallet. You can go to MetaMask and make a wallet right now with no Ethereum in it, and you can go to Mintable and you can do what's called lazy minting. That's also available on OpenSea. What that means is that you don't pay the gas; they will mint it. It is not on chain until somebody buys it. When somebody buys it, then it gets minted on chain and the buyer pays the gas fee. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can go to, there are a bunch of other places where you can mint and you can have your own marketplace and it costs $10. You can go to NFT cred, yeah, NFT.kred, cred, and you can, for $10 a month, be a creator. They might have upped the price to 20. I got in early, but and you can mint there, and those are minted on the Polygon network. So you can mint for $10 a month. I was minting 100 NFTs, and you can sell them there. You can send them over to the other chains and send them in other marketplaces, or you can use them as community rewards. It just depends on what you want to do. On Foundation, if you can get a Foundation invite, if you're a known artist and you find somebody who's on Foundation who has an invite, then you can mint there and you don't pay anything, but you pay a 15% transaction fee when it's sold. So there's all sorts of ways to do it without having to have Ethereum. I was just going through this last night where I was minting, and it was like one time it was $12 and 20 minutes later it was 140. I'm like, oh my goodness. So gas fluctuates greatly. So
Yeah.
you just have to look, you can look up Ethereum gas prices, and I can't remember which is the best tracker of that. But if you just look up Ethereum gas price on Google, you'll get like 15 different places that track it.
Actually, Adrian, can my jargon meter is flipping over a little bit. So can
Okay,
you
sorry.
explain gas fees and on chain?
Okay, so on chain and off chain, a lot of these marketplaces are realizing that the basically gas fees are transaction fees. It's the rewards that the miners who maintain the blockchain are given for processing transactions and putting them on the blockchain, and that's what makes it immutable. It's in a block, they're built on each other, and it's cryptographically tied together, so you can't change anything in a previous block. So those gas fees are basically transaction fees for the blockchain itself. And MetaMask will tell you how much it's going to cost for you to complete a transaction based on whatever the going rate, the prevailing rate of gas fees are. And so on chain is when it's actually been written permanently, immutably to the blockchain. Off chain is when it's basically prepped to be written and it's in the database on the platform, but it's not on the blockchain yet. Does that work?
Yeah,
That's awesome. Thanks, Adrian.
everything
Okay.
you said was very, very helpful.
So
Well,
you definitely need a MetaMask wallet. It's free. You're going to go to metamask.io. You're going to click the little get the thingy. It's going to take you to the correct, not the fake, not the bogus, not the clones that are stealing all your shit. Plug in the Chrome marketplace, and you're going to add that. You can also download the MetaMask app on your phone, and you're going to create a free account. You need that. That's literally like your pass to get into all of these places. My issue is that it doesn't prove who you are. It's just a wallet.
Okay, thanks. I have one more question, if that's
go
okay.
ahead. We're here for you.
I was in some other rooms, and there were creators who were talking about creating their own tokens,
Yep.
and I was wondering if that's like really important, and what's the value in creating your own token?
It depends on how quickly you would like to go to jail. So if you're doing it right,
Not
then you're
quick.
not going to jail. If you're doing it because you're sitting in a bunch of BitClout rooms and they're telling you how much of a good idea it is, and you're deciding to do your own or that or whatever, then it's highly much more likely, because you can break securities laws by selling unregistered securities, and your creator coin can be an unregistered security if you don't know what to do with it. So if you are famous and you want to do it, I would suggest Rally. I'm being onboarded right now. It is the slowest process on the planet, but they are doing it right to make sure everybody doesn't break the law and they know what they're supposed to do. So that part works. But the basic idea is, if you're going to do a creator coin, it has to be a utility. It has to do something. They have to be able to buy concert tickets or buy your products or gain access to an exclusive community. It has to actually have a function, and that function has to be available before you sell it. That's literally the kindergarten version of it. And then the tokens gain value based on use and how many people own them and how desirable they are. So it's the supply and demand that determines the price.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Oh, So I would like to invite anybody who has a question, go ahead and raise your hand. No question is too basic. But while we're waiting for somebody to pipe up, I wanted to talk about the issue of cyber squatting, which has kind of reared its ugly head, particularly in terms of in terms of URLs. Adrian, I'm guessing you have something you want to say about that.
Yes, I had just a little baby meltdown when I couldn't get Adrian.crypto, just a little baby meltdown. Because I was in a room and somebody goes, hey, these .cryptos. And I was like, he just stole my name. He totally stole my name. So I reached out one of the other, to one of the founders. Thankfully Tim Draper owns it, so it made life much easier. They actually held it for me. Nobody was squatting on it. They held all of the top level domains that they had bought. They held Adrian at all of those for me on purpose. I was like, yes. So I got it. But there are people squatting. When I did Crowded TV in 2015, there was a guy squatting on crowdedtv.com, redirecting it to a T-shirt factory, and he wouldn't give it to me. And I'm like, I have the trademark, I have this, I have this, I have that. He didn't care. So I was going to have to actually file an ICANN dispute, which is what you would have to do. And then the only issue there is if it is a .is, then Iceland's basically going to say fuck off. Pardon my language. They don't really respond to that. So if you ever have an idea and you have IP and you have a trademark, make sure you go by your .is. That is
Yeah,
all.
this is. I just have a comment here that it's really funny, the standard crypto community people, and I'm being very general right now. We want all the decentralization, get rid of all the third parties that enforce. I don't want to be subject to the laws. Oh, but you typo squatted on my name. You better give it to me right now. Like, everybody talks out of both sides of their mouth all the time when it affects them. And I actually think that it's really funny when people don't realize they just did it. There are people who are trying to do this the right way, trying to verify people who they are legally, who you are practically. Did you get there first and you registered it? But what's interesting is, I own the trademark in the United States. Is .crypto a United States legal enforceable thing? No, it's an internet enforceable thing. Like, who gets to win here? And I really think you can't have it both ways. You either need to accept Wild Wild West and find some mechanism, the DeFi of domains, and you're just going to have to pay for your name back, or you have to find a good legal, appropriate, I don't know what the right word there, to let everybody get what they're entitled to. If whatever sequence of digits uniquely identifies me in the world should belong to me as a human being. But I don't know beyond that, especially when we start getting into what people think they really want to potentially build. And it's
Well,
tricky here.
Well, I just
well, I
didn't want
think that
anybody building anything under my name pretending to be me because I am one of the most forged advisors on ICO white
Mm-hmm.
papers in crypto. I'm one of the top 5 that are illegally named as advisors when I've never heard of it before. So that's why in this particular industry they held it for me.
Mm-hmm.
well,
They wouldn't if it was .farm.
trademark law will trump ICANN though, because it is the use of a domain name is just a name, right? And names can be trademarked, and so you can, you may or may not have great success with that, but at the very least you should have a trademark. But with respect to your comments about people screaming about a name being taken, I think there's a fundamental problem with DNS. Um, the way that allocations are made on a first come first served basis has created tremendous conflicts. I remember the days when Uzi Nissan first published his Nissan.com website, right? And then the Japanese manufacturer, late to the game, car manufacturer, late to the game, decided to sue. They wanted that domain, right? Now they could have probably been nice about it and asked him, and he might have surrendered the name, but instead they were nasty, and so he said no. My name is Nissan. That's my surname, and I have my little consulting business, and I have every right to the .com. And they fought that for years and years and years. And at the end of the day, Nissan, the big Japanese company, lost. They just couldn't get the name, so they had to go with Nissan Motors. And he still, from what I understand, owns it, or he might have surrendered. I've forgotten, what ultimately happened. But there have, this concept of squatting, I think, is very valid. There are people who will just take a name because it's free, because no one took it before, and they just sit on it waiting until it becomes good money, right? There are people who took the name Bank of America, and Bank of America had to pay a lot of money for that domain, etc.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that, in the world of blockchain, we need to do it better. We didn't do a good job with DNS, and when I was working on EOS, part of the EOS constitution was focused on the issue of resource allocation of uniqueness, because they were an account-based system. And the question was, well, how are we going to, how are we, how is Adrian going to have her name, right? And the answer was, well, we don't know. We haven't figured it out. We're going to go live with this thing anyway. And what we're going to do is we're going to impose some really bizarre set of rules on possible names, like they have to be exactly 12 characters in length, right? Um, until we figure it out. Well, we never did figure it out, but I think it's a problem that that we do need to eventually come to terms with, because uniqueness in the world, unique identification, is not only valuable, it's crucial to a lot of operations. And we don't currently have a good way. I mean, we've never honestly had a good way. There's, I don't know how many Eric Calders out there, right? Um, Probably only one with the same social security number, right? But that's that social security number is as valuable as everything else. So
Erica, we have to wrap it up. It's 11. Let's continue
uh,
this discussion tomorrow because we have this is kind of another long one. I think, Jeanette, you had some very long agenda issues today, which is good. Before we leave, I just want to make sure that you know that we host our virtual Infiom Salon every other Wednesday. We did not talk about um, movable NFTs, the way I think of them, which is NFTs inside the games, NFTs in fashion, lifestyle, film, television, etc. Tomorrow we have two companies presenting in this space. Waka W Live. I think Avanish is one of the listeners. I was trying to invite him to tell us a little bit about it, but you can hear it tomorrow. And then Brian Lee, someone I worked with at Sony many years ago, with a company called Poppins out of Seattle. That both of these are very interesting and sort of multi-dimensional kind of NFT applications. We also have Juan Lopez, product marketing from Circle, which is one of the top fintech players in this space and an early entrant. And then Drew Falkman, who was one of the creators of the whole DAO infrastructure. He's going to talk about Savita DAO, but he's created many DAOs in his career. So it's very exciting panel. I hope you can join us at 12:30 for the salon, and then we have a Q&A in the clubhouse at 1:30 with all of these wonderful speakers that you met today and some of our other speakers from the salon. So thank you, Jeanette, for making this very interesting discussion today. And thank you, everyone else.
Thank you all for your passionate and lively discussion.
See you guys tomorrow, 12:30.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
wonderful.
Bye.
Good
Thanks.
discussion, guys.
Bye.